Hi, welcome to the Faces of Façades. Today I'm joined by Marc Zimmer, who is the president of Frener Reifer in America. Marc, thanks a lot for joining me.
Good morning, Erin. It's a pleasure being here today.
Great. Before we get into Frener Reifer and the US market, what I'd like to do is start right at the beginning. So, how did you first find your way into the facade world?
Okay. That's an interesting question because I was thinking about that one, and it brought me back to when I actually still was in high school, and I was thinking about what kind of profession I was looking for and what do I want to do in a study. And I decided I want to go into the construction industry. And for multiple reasons, because back then construction is something where you're not stuck behind your desk for every day. It's driven by people, and every project is different. So you're like always involved in something new and different type of projects. And at the time then when I went into the studies was also the time that actually Dubai was starting to do their construction boom. So I always had like a intention to go international.
Uh-huh.
From my background perspective, I studied structural engineering in Germany at the Technical University in Darmstadt, and then I also studied at SUNY Buffalo and got a master in earthquake engineering. So the
Right.
beginning of my professional life was very technically driven.
Mm-hmm.
And I also then, when I was done, I wanted to go international. So I started with Weidling Associate, which is now part of Thornton Tomasetti,
Uh-huh.
in 2001 in Boston. And very early on in that aspect, I was exposed to different projects. And one of the projects then, after about 3 years as a structural engineer, I got involved in the Museum of Fine Art
Uh-huh.
with Foster, and the facade contractor was a German facade contractor. And through that project, we started to get talking. And at that time, they were looking for somebody to go into the operations with a technical background.
Uh-huh.
So I pretty much made the jump from fully engineering to a facade subcontractor. And it was a leap of faith back then for me, but I jumped into it. I moved from Boston to New York, and since then, which has now been over 20 years, I've been engaged in the facade industry, and I love it with all the challenges, all the good and the bad that comes with the facade industry.
Well, I think that's a great start. I mean, looking back now, who or what would you say was your biggest influence on how you think about the way you work today?
So I think when I started in the facade industry, it was about half a year before the first Apple Cube in New York City was opened.
Right.
So early on, I was exposed to structural glass
Uh-huh.
at the highest level. Back then, Steve Jobs attended the opening, and I just got thrown into the project. I got familiar with Apple and their pushing of the industry in the facade industry, and that has, for me, defined the rest of my professional life because it gave me this attitude: anything is possible if you put the team together, if you put the innovation together. And that's what, from that point on, I personally have always been thriving through with all the projects that we're doing.
Right. So that was a real influence for you. The Steve Jobs and the
Yep.
Apple era, just setting up those retail stores that we see now with the huge glass panels.
Correct. I mean, obviously, over the years, we've worked on many different other projects, and as you have with every type of project, and I call them innovative projects,
Hmm.
you get exposed to different aspects.
Okay. Well, just touching on that and bringing it back to Frener and Reifer and the craft behind the brand. People talk a lot about
Yeah.
craftsmanship when they talk about Frener and Reifer, especially. What does that actually mean in practice on a day to day?
Well, I would say, like, if you take Frener Reifer, every company in the facade industry, they have design, production, delivery, and installation. So they have the value chain. And if I would compare it a little bit to the racing, it's 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 the motor, but in order to make everything happen, the driver is the one who makes it happen.
Uh-huh.
So I think what really drives Frener Reifer, who is located in northern Italy in the Südtirol in Brixen, Bresanone,
Uh-huh.
is the people.
Right.
And in the words of our CEO at the last Christmas party, he was going back, Gerhard was mentioning again, it's like we get the most innovative projects in the industry, but it's you who make it real to realize these projects.
Mm.
So you can put processes in place, you can put any kind of aspect, but at the end of the day, it's the people behind Frener Reifer.
Right.
And we have a lot of employees in our company that are between 10 to 45 years with the company.
Mm.
And if you look at just from that perspective, you're creating a family environment.
Mhm.
You're creating an immense knowledge base that then also gets transferred to the younger generation that is
Mhm.
entering into Frener Reifer. And that is something that's for us as an important aspect because um, people work together in a very collaborative way, in a family way. We
Mhm.
have also partially family generations in the company.
Mhm.
And then additionally, when we work with our clients, that partnership means that they let us in as being part of their team, but at the same time, we're letting them in to be part of our family
Mm.
in order to execute their project. And I
Mm.
think that is something which really makes Frener Reifer stand out.
Okay. So, I mean, it's interesting being fundamentally a European-owned business breaking into the US market. What is it about what you're offering that developers will choose your services over using a local facade company?
Well, um, not every project is a project for Frener Reifer. So let's start from that perspective. And if I would start comparing US and the European market a little bit, um, the US as a country is so large,
Mm.
and there's so much opportunity and innovation that happens in the US market. But a lot is driven that you do a product development,
Mhm.
and the product development, just by the nature of the US, gives enough growth opportunity throughout the country.
Mm.
Um, in return, in Europe, it's a lot more common to have customized design projects.
Mm.
So architect, engineers, they come to you with a vision, and sometimes we start off with a rendering about a project, and you use that rendering, and you have to now find a way how you're executing that rendering,
Mm.
and not how to take a rendering and just apply a product. And
Mm.
that that's what I'm saying. Like for every type of project, there's the right application. Like, and
Mm.
then I say that to our clients as well. Like, like we might not be the right partner for every type of project.
Mm.
So from that perspective, what I see a major difference is like we're used to having customized projects in all the aspects that we're starting. And I
Mm.
mean, our statement has always been starting where others stop. It's
Mm.
because we go from the innovation perspective, each project is a part of an innovation. Like you
Mhm.
sometimes have a certain aspect on the project that wants to be stand out that maybe I've never done before, or you want to apply it at the highest quality,
Mm.
and that's where a lot of clients get Frener Reifer involved.
Right. I mean, you spent a long time leading businesses in the US, and you're based in New York, right?
Yep,
Yeah. So does New York differ to the wider US market? Is that a market unto its own? How does it compare?
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, we do work all over the country,
Mm.
so we're not geographically driven. We're more project driven.
Right.
So we're set up to do work anywhere in the U.S., anywhere in
Mhm.
Canada, and
Mhm.
anywhere around the world.
Mhm.
New York, as well as like other cities in the U.S., everybody has its character and how they want to approach it. And
Mm.
sometimes when I do projects outside of New York, some clients have said to me when I walk into the door, "Please leave the New Yorker in New York," because they know there's a difference there. So it's well known.
Mm.
Now ask me what the difference is. I think one aspect that comes into play that is driving the New York industry is New York has a complete different price tag
Mhm.
than other parts of the country.
Right.
And because of that price tag, the statement "time is money" that drives how a lot of the projects are being approached in New York City.
Mhm.
So they're under high, like a very tight schedule, high pressure, and the reason for that is really to assure that the project is executed in a very timely fashion because
Mhm.
every day has such a dollar sign to it.
Mhm.
that in New York everybody is used to that environment,
Mm.
and it's a great environment. It has a high pace environment, but it's driven by due to the cost as well.
Mm. And is there the client expectations on the project culture shaping the way that the work is delivered in America? Is that different to how you would say it works in Europe?
Um, I would say where the US really stands out is that due to the size, I would say that the US is always very entrepreneurial and looking into the future,
Hmm.
and they also continue to finance and invest into new projects. No
Mm.
matter what the market is, they want to move forward
Mm.
and they want to invest into the market.
Mm.
In the one From that perspective, there's like an entrepreneurial approach in the US,
Hmm.
and clients, they collaborate with you more in the US market than I would say in Europe. It's a different approach. The European approach probably more direct,
Right.
a little bit more comparable to like maybe the New York market,
Right.
where it's about being direct, but then
Mm.
still at the end of the day, you still have a understanding what it means to be direct. And sometimes if you take the European approach and you would bring it to a US market in the correspondence, and you've never dealt in the US before,
Hmm.
some of these statements could be offensive, which is not the reason that is being meant. So I think what I definitely enjoy, and that's the reason I've been in the US market, has been the collaborative approach to all of
Mm.
the projects that is being executed in the US.
Okay, so let's touch on some of these projects. Are there any one or two schemes that really stand out for you that you've been involved with that really stayed with you?
Yeah, I have two projects. I've been thinking about that one, and I'm picking one project which is
Mm.
highly confidential, so I cannot share anything about the project. But what I want to share is, which really stood out to me from a collaborative approach. The client on that project, they had a vision
Hmm.
and they wanted to accomplish something in the execution. They, in part of that decision, they put a team together
Hmm.
that goes through the journey to accomplish that vision. So it was less about here's the contract, here's all the contract scope. It was about the team that the client put together. And throughout the project, and this has been a couple of years ongoing, and we're getting to the completion.
Mm.
In that project, we went from partnership, cooperation to friendship.
Hmm.
And I credit this purely to the environment that the client has set on this project.
Hmm.
And he picked the team to go through and developing that vision. And
Right.
that is something I would say is really rare to find it in that manner,
Mm.
where you want to accomplish something and you have to have the right team. The second project that we've recently completed, which was a very challenging project, and I will share a quick
Hmm.
image about it so that
Yeah.
that everybody understands what I'm
Yeah, that'd
talking
be great.
about. So this was an interesting project. It's the Big Sky Resort. It's the top tram, and it's at about 11,300 feet elevation.
Hmm.
And we got approached with a rendering and an idea on the project by a facade contractor and ownership, and they wanted to work with us and see what we can do for this project. So you go through a design phase, and you have like the design, production, delivery, and installation. But the interesting part on the project is, when we started off, you saw on the project there was um, a very traditional approach. You put a steel structure, so it's a glass box that people should be walking out and overseeing uh, in Montana,
Hmm.
the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
So when you initially look at the design, there was a lot of steel, there was a lot of penetration through glass, which always
Mm.
reduces the strength of the glass. And the client had the idea, I want as much transparency as possible.
Right.
What can we do? So we started on this project very early on. So we developed an option, and then a lot of questions came up throughout these design development that I said, well, wait a second, let's hit the brakes for a moment on this project, which
Right.
was a defining moment, and get together with the client and let's discuss all the different aspects, because every time we discussed one design, they're like, who could be a supplier? How do we do the maintenance? Because it's at 11,300 feet. There is no way to just drive it up there.
Sure.
It always had to be brought up with a helicopter. So we had the idea of the architect about transparency.
Mm,
We had a financial consideration that we needed to look at, but then
mhm,
also the initial installation methodology, but then also the maintenance at a later point. And then the last thing was about the glass, because you could use different glass sizes.
mm,
At what point you get into your supply chain, and some glass sizes limit the amount of supply chain. So we presented that to the client in
mhm,
order to develop, like, every one of these aspects need to be taken into consideration,
mm,
but you need to decide what is the important one for you. Like, put them into a hierarchy, give it a priority. Based on that, we can then develop the design. And that was a critical point in the decision making, because then we narrowed it down to two options. And then at the end, we actually had the final option, which was a combination of the two options. And it came out that everybody was very happy on the project. So you remember the initial rendering.
mhm,
Now this is the execution rendering
mhm.
after we're done with the design phase. So we turned the glass box into a structural glass box. And I think I can probably say today it's the highest structural glass box or structural glass
Wow.
structure in the world
Wow.
from an elevation perspective.
Mm,
It's at 11,300 feet.
crazy.
And this box is fully self-sustainable. And you only have steel fittings that is holding the glass together. And people can now walk out and experience the full transparency.
Yeah,
So
this
they
project,
opened on December 20th.
yeah,
And here you see the final project installed and completed and open to the public.
looks incredible. I mean, the challenges
So,
you can see the challenges even before you've started building it, right? So
right.
your company motto of starting where the others stop. I mean, this project summarizes that perfectly, really.
Yeah. And we had a collaboration with MT Contracting
Right.
on the installation side. They were the local company that actually got us on board on this project. So
Hmm.
I'm also giving them credit in working with us on the execution. And but this challenge on the project, it's a very interesting project, but it kind
Mm,
of reflects a lot of times when we talk about innovation,
mm,
where you start off with a rendering
hmm.
and you start off with one idea, you end up completely at a different angle, but you go through that project where you understand what are the client's demands, needs, what are the boundaries he wants to work to in order to accomplish a project.
Yeah. I mean, you hear every day of architects' dreams on paper not becoming reality because the contractors have said, forget it, this is not possible. So there must have been a lot of people saying this is impossible on that one.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
where I mean, that's what, you came back to the motivation and the facade industry.
Mm,
That's what motivates you. And I think we'll talk a little bit later about leadership and things like that.
hmm. I'm actually going to
But
come on
that's
to
the
that
part when
next.
you get
Yeah.
involved in these projects.
Yeah. So I was going to, you led me nicely onto leadership. I was going to come on to that next. How would you describe your approach to leadership as you've evolved throughout your career? Has that changed much? Have you got a different view on it?
Um, well, definitely, because I mean, the longer you get involved in aspects, the longer you're in leadership, you gain a lot of experience, and throughout the
Mm,
experience, that shapes you, and
mm,
that's a normal process that I think everybody goes through.
mm,
Um, how would I describe my leadership? Definitely, I mean, we talked about Frener Reifer, we talked about the facade industry and the innovation that we're going through. So I would say I definitely have a pace-setting leadership,
mhm,
which is like I want to keep the bar really high for the teams
mhm,
because of the type of projects that we're executing.
mm,
And I keep the same kind of approach also for myself, where
mhm,
I'm saying we have to understand that we're dealing with innovative projects, the client expecting a certain level of quality from Frener Reifer and our
mhm.
company, and they also expect a collaboration. So
Right.
from that perspective, I think the pace setting leadership would describe it very well, because it gives the employees also a level of growth.
mm,
which is kind of like the second part is the coaching is to, on the one side, you have an understanding that what we need to accomplish and why we need to accomplish it.
mm,
And on the other side, you need to provide the resources and the tool to the employees in order to be able to get to that level.
mm. So,
The other part, and I think that comes with construction in
mm,
general, is there are certain moments where you have to kind of like provide like a more hands-on leadership,
mhm,
where you dive more into certain details as well as like a critical moment management or crisis. Some call like crisis management. I
mm,
think you will never step away from that aspect, where you sometimes have to step into a project, make the decisions from a holistic perspective, which includes like the technical side, the scheduling, the financial side, as well as the
mm,
client consideration
mm.
in order to move the project forward.
Okay.
But I think those four facets would probably describe me very well in regards to my leadership.
I will come on to the future and technology and innovation, but how do we keep attracting good people into facades and elevate the profession?
Well, I think our industry has a lot of opportunities and it's also constantly changing. I mean, you have new companies come into the market.
Mm,
Um, People are changing companies as well.
mhm,
What you see, so like that creates opportunities. But then on the other side, I think that the clients are pushing the industry as well. So there's continuously people coming forward, and I think what people need to realize is that the facade industry has a lot of opportunities.
mm,
Number one, we are a subcontractor that next to the primary structure,
mm,
we're the next most important element in the projects. It doesn't matter where, we're always important and we're always a critical path. So that comes with a level of responsibility.
mm,
If you're in the facade industry, we're as subcontractors, we're executing the project. So we're designing, we're producing, we're delivering, and we're installation. So we have so many steps in the whole process that we need to execute the project and make it happen.
mm,
And throughout these projects, if you're entering into the industry, you can position yourself anywhere in these aspects, or you can become a more all around and start to learn technical side. You start from a logistic perspective, site management, site setup management. And then you also start learning about like what is even possible and what to do. And I think to wrap this up from the perspective,
mm,
at the end of the day, you have a trophy that you can always go back and show your friends, families, colleagues that you can jointly be proud about it.
mm,
And that was something that one told me when I was a student before I became even a student in construction. He says that's something that drives me every day, and that statement that stuck with me, and it's true. And let's be realistic. Any person that's walking up to the building, what are they going to see first? It
mhm,
will always be the facade.
mhm,
I mean, look at yourself and your background behind you. So I think if you're a talent and you're asking yourself what aspects of the industry and construction you want to enter,
mm,
I would definitely say like facade industry is one. It's not always easy, but it has so many opportunities. If you're willing to work into a technical environment and you will have something that you will see for the rest of your life, I would say that is something that I would advise for younger talent.
mm,
And the last thing
mhm,
to finalize is like, I think everybody needs to know for themselves
mhm,
why they're doing what they're doing
mhm,
because it creates your personal intrinsic motivation.
mhm.
And that is something where the younger generation has to throughout the year, they have to know why they're doing something and what drives them to be in the industry.
Mm, fine. Good. So talking about the future, if we can, um, where we see things heading, especially with the speed of how things are moving with innovation, are there materials or technologies that genuinely excite you right now?
Well, the first excitement is always each project in my eyes is an innovation
Mm,
because each project is different.
okay.
And what you see in general is the changes of combining material, like using facade, using obviously you have glass,
Mm,
incorporating other materials into the facade. and creating like a complete building with
Mm,
different type of facets into it. And I think that's definitely innovative. I mean, what always motivates me, or what I think is glass is one of the materials that is still being pushed in the industry a lot. And then the other aspect that I feel excited about as well is the sustainability, like the looking at the buildings
mhm,
and how do you replace glass after 20, 30 years, because there's a certain lifespan or life cycle that a glass can go under, and then at one point the energy requirements are dropping, and
mm,
ownership of the building needs to make a decision. And as you know, right now, like in New York City over the last years, the recladding on high-rise buildings has started,
mhm,
and that will happen in other buildings as well. So now starting to think about that as you're designing the initial facade, about thinking about the replacement, I think that's a very sustainable approach. So it's not about how do we build it and then walk away. No, like how do we build it? How do we make it replaceable in 20, 30, 40 years
mm,
for the ownership? I think that is something that is more incorporated. And then lastly, how do you recycle some of the material and then reintroduce it into the supply chain
mhm,
for the usage? I mean, that's
mm.
another aspect.
So sustainability has really changed the way you start thinking about facades and delivery from that
Yeah.
aspect. Yeah. Do you see any real opportunity for any meaningful change to the way buildings and facades are being installed or made? Is there any innovation on that side coming along?
Well, I would say the approach on how much you can pre-assemble, as well as like the equipment technology, has allowed to make the installations more effective.
Hmm.
And there's definitely throughout the years, developing certain equipment for the facade industry has made the installation more effective,
Hmm.
but also safer in many aspects for the installers, because safety is also a really important aspect in the installation phase of a facade. But at the end of the day, like from our perspective as Frener Reifer, when you're building in different geographic locations,
Hmm.
every project is different. So you need to look at your availability on how to install it.
Okay.
Talking about New York City, it's a just-in-time delivery.
Mm,
Other areas, you might have a lot of real estate for storage, so you have
mm,
a different approach on the installation and delivery. Versus if you have, for instance, what I showed earlier, the Big Sky project, we had
mhm,
to take into consideration that all the material is being flown up by helicopter. So you see, like every project, you have to think about and start a new way on how do you deliver the material, or how do you approach the project. And I call that design to installation. When you
mhm.
design something, you need to know how to install it, and
Okay.
it goes at the same time together. You cannot leave one of the aspects out.
Sure. Gotcha. Okay. Well, look, I think we've covered quite a lot of information there. I'd like to sort of ask some five fast questions just to be a little bit more light-hearted at this stage, if that's okay. Which I know you have. I know you haven't prepared for. So the first question is, excuse my pronunciation, but bratwurst or hot dog?
Bratwurst.
Bratwurst. Okay. City break or on the beach?
Beach, definitely beach. I personally love Hawaii,
Hmm.
and I've been there multiple times. And even though I live outside of New York and I'm like in New York all the time,
Mm,
you have to find time where you settle down, and that's why I say beach is for me definitely preferred.
sounds good. The best advice you've ever received? You can summarize that.
Best advice. Well, I had a question when I was young and interviewing for internships in my profession. I would always ask the CEO what advice you would give me as a
Mm,
young starting the industry.
mm,
And one CEO said to me back then, he said, "You're very young right now. Our industry is so big. Experiment different aspects of the industry, but at one point make a decision why you like something, and then put your efforts behind it." And I think that has really resonated with me. of like exploring the construction industry. And obviously, being over 25 years in the US construction industry, as well over 20 years in the facade industry, and approaching 10 years with Frener Reifer, it kind of like stuck with me, that statement.
Yes, good advice. A building that you really admire.
A building that I really admire, one of the projects I've been involved in is the Whitney Museum in New York.
Hmm.
And that was done by Renzo Piano
Hmm.
back then. And the reason I admire it is for the fact of like when you go into a museum in any kind of city, you enter the museum and then you lose the city around you.
Hmm.
And Renzo Piano's vision on this museum was that he wanted to incorporate the inside and the outside together.
Hmm.
And he created the Whitney Museum, which has these different terraces that are linked by stairs on the exterior, but also on the interior. And each of the floors above have an open layout, so you can always change the layout of your exhibition,
Hmm.
as well as like all the MEP was done to full precision, so it's fully exposed. So from the perspective of when you go through the Whitney Museum and
Hmm.
visiting a museum, you step outside and you know you're in New York City and you
Hmm.
have the view on the skyline. If you understand you're in New York, you go back into the museum. And I think that vision that he brought to that museum
Hmm.
stood really out for me. And I personally like this as one of my top museums to visit.
Great. Finally, what was your dream job growing up as a kid?
My dream job growing up as a kid. It's I always wanted to have a job and where you're dealing with people and you cooperate with people and go international.
Right.
Personally, I grew up traveling a lot the world
Mm.
through my parents that I'm very grateful for.
Hmm.
And that kind of like instilled in me like a level of internationality as well as like traveling internationally. So
Mm.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, which capitalized later in life when I was in high school and I was starting to think about it more serious and what kind of jobs are out there. And I was doing my research and talking with people and even doing some internships
Hmm.
before I even started studying engineering or
Mm.
going into the construction studies. But for me, it was like more like vague defined boundaries.
Okay.
And that kind of like shaped over the years.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. Um, we've covered a lot of topics. I'd like to close with one question, and that's if
Yeah.
someone's listening uh, is quite early in their facade career right now, what would you want them to take away from this conversation?
What I would, what I would like them to take away, there's not one way on how you can develop and shape your career or your profession. But what I definitely would say, if you're in your early part of your career, focus on learning and understanding and putting your efforts behind it.
Hmm.
And then in later part of your career, you then understand what you want to do and where you have developed your strengths. And I feel, unfortunately, I've seen some people that enter the industry and they're more chasing the money and not understanding what they actually want to learn and how they want to grow. And I would say if there's one thing that I would as personal, if somebody asked me as a student today what advice, I would tell them focus on understanding, focus on learning in the beginning of your career
Hmm.
and understand what you're doing and understand what drives you from an intrinsic motivation
Hmm.
to move forward. Because construction is an industry that has many different ups and downs. Not everything is celebration, not everything is easy. There's some tough moments as well. But if you know what motivates you and you know why you're in the industry, you will get through every situation.
Great. Mark, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Aaron, thanks a lot. You have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, everybody.